Hi, I'm Ed Wilkinson. Welcome to On the Block. And we're going to be talking today with Father Eric Cruz, who's from the Bronx, the Archdiocese of New York. Father Cruz, first of all, give us a little bit about your assignment. Where are you assigned these days?
Well, I'm currently the pastor of St. John Chrysostom in the South Bronx, and I'm also the regional director for Catholic Charities for the borough of the Bronx.
All right, so that keeps you busy, right?
Very busy, very busy.
So at one time, I mean, you're very busy now, and you've got a steady job, so to speak, and you've got a place where you live, but at one time, things weren't as easy for you. You actually found yourself in a homeless shelter at one point in your life, didn't you? I mean, how did you wind up in a homeless shelter?
Well, I was working as a news reporter in the South Bend, where I was still living, for the South Bend Tribune. And I'll never forget, Ed, on one Saturday afternoon in my apartment, Saturday that I didn't have to work, I received a phone call, and it was an attorney representing my alma mater. I had fallen behind on my student loan payments, and a long story short, well, what can I do about it? You know, at this point, it's a Saturday. I can hopefully address it on Monday. They demanded payment Saturday, something. Did so by fax, set up a schedule as best as possible. And at the time, student loans, 5 loans that I had outstanding, still trying to pay and balance, fell behind again after a few weeks. One of my newspaper court reporter colleagues told me, oh, by the way, I saw your name on judge's docket. I said, really? I had been taken to court for those loan payments. Lost the case, immediate garnishment began, about a third of my regular pay, and I just could not live in my apartment anymore. I had to return the car that I was leasing. I found myself homeless and deciding, what am I going to do? Am I going to stay here? I can't keep living on what I'm earning. And then the whole fear of being homeless.
Now, you were working, you still had your job,
I had
right?
a full-time job.
And you'd go and you'd come home at night to a homeless shelter.
Well, eventually, yes, for a short period of time. Hard to keep that a secret after a while. A lot of my friends from the city around town learned about it. People with whom I worked in education prior. They tracked me down, called me at work. What's going on? Why didn't you ask for help? You know you could stay with us, the whole 9 yards. And that's when I realized how stubborn and pig-headed I was.
I was going to say, why didn't you call them? Why didn't you?
I think it was the embarrassment. All I thought about was my family, my mom. What am I going to tell them? The first 4-year college graduate has nothing to show for it.
Wow. Yeah.
You know, all the sacrifices they made, what are they going to think? The people, when I was in education, helping kids as a counselor and as a teacher, always been on that side of the table, if you will. And now to be on the other side, you're embarrassed and almost ashamed to ask for help. And that's where I ended. That's where I lasted. Yeah. It took an emotional and spiritual toll on me.
So, what kind of work did you do as a journalist? You said you were with the South Bend paper? Or?
South Bend paper. I was mostly a crime beat reporter. A desk at the station house locally. I'd write occasional features wherever time allowed. Dabbled into some sports writing, more fan-friendly, I say, because I was a sports official in the 3 major sports for the state of Indiana and Michigan. Small Division II colleges type of thing that my friends really helped me participate in, and we were part of the crew for the sports. And that became more of not so much a career, but I took it eventually as a vocation to try to serve whomever, the public good, if you will, through my career and my work.
So South Bend, naturally, I guess you went to the University of Notre Dame, right?
I did.
Okay. And did you study journalism there? Did you intend on being a reporter?
No, you never do. No offense. My intent was to be a history government major. After one semester, I realized it wasn't for me. I attended the courses, there was nothing there. It was good to be a history aficionado and to read and learn about it, than to take that up. And just investigating the first year or two, I just fell in love with sports. And I remembered a dream when I was growing up to be on CBS Sports. You know, at the time, Brent Musburger and Jimmy the Greek on CBS, that's where I want to be. That's where I wanted to land. And I just remembered that, and that became my goal at the time.
What was life like at Notre Dame? Because you think of it as, of course, football you think of right away, and I guess it's a pretty active social place, right?
It was different in its social life then. It wasn't as strict as it is nowadays. Justifiably so, much better now, safer for the students, if you will, in terms of the parties and the alcohol control that college students could fall into. Notre Dame is a special place. I'll be honest with you, it's home. Through the peaks and the valleys, and I had my challenges as a student there at various levels. But the fact is, I look forward to returning every year and seeing my classmates, maybe seeing some of my professors who are still there. I feel incredibly at home there. People who've never been there, yeah, Notre Dame. I can't describe it unless you go and experience it. And everyone returns with that sentiment, I believe.
So how did you finally get yourself out of that homeless shelter and, so to speak, back on your feet and become a little bit more self-sufficient?
All credit to my friends. I didn't stay long in the shelter. I did move in with a friend of mine, her family, whose children were my students when I was teaching. We worked together for years. They had an extra room, and that's where I stayed. But I did have to make a decision for myself. Stay, rebuild, if you will, or return east, find work back here closer to home. I found myself at a crossroads.
Now, who is Jack Reed?
Jack Reed was the deputy mayor of South Bend. When I was going through these financial difficulties, I received a call on another Saturday out of the blue at my friend's house, and it was Jack. I had served on the Mayor's Advisory Council for a few years prior. He learned about my problems, and the first thing he told me, I heard about this, I just need you to shut up and listen to what I'm going to tell you. That's exactly what he said. I said, okay, everyone who knows you, cares about you, loves you, has collected, and we're paying off everything you owe up to this point. And I was just flabbergasted, stunned. And I started to ask, well, who, how? He said, I told you not to ask any questions. Accept it as a gift from the people who love you. Just say thank you. I said, thanks. That was the last time Jack and I spoke. He would not call me back because he knew why I was calling all this time.
Wow.
Yes.
And have you ever seen him again? Or?
I saw him a few years ago when I returned to college. He was at a game and we ran into each other at a tailgate.
Wow, that's great. And so how long did you stay then out there in South Bend? Did you continue to stay in the area?
I stayed probably another 2 years.
Okay.
I returned in 96 to New York.
All right. We're going to take a quick break, but then when we come back, I want to talk a little bit more about growing up in the South Bronx, and then also, where did this idea of becoming a priest come from? So, you're watching On the Block. I'm Ed Wilkinson. This is Father Eric Cruz. We're coming right back. Welcome back to On the Block. I'm Ed Wilkinson, here today with Father Eric Cruz. Now, Father, we were talking about your time out in South Bend, but I want to come back to the Bronx, where you actually grew up, right?
Yes.
And
yes.
A regular street kid, right? You played out in the streets,
you
played football and all that kind of stuff. But you tell the story about one time when you were hanging out in the street at night and you were sitting up on a car like we all tended to do back in those days, and you fell off the car and you had a bit of an accident. Tell us a little bit about that episode.
Yes, that happened the first Saturday of August that year, 82, 83. We were just sitting on the back of a car. Choir practice had just ended at the parish. And I remember one of the associate priests, a dear, dear mentor of mine, God rest his soul, was on vacation and I was doing some work for him, like bulletin work. The driver of the car did not notice we were leaning against it, or I was sitting or leaning against it, and took off. Sort of startled, I jumped off the back. I landed on my feet but stumbled backwards and hit my head squarely on the concrete. Unconscious, essentially no heartbeat, a good 15 to 20 minutes. EMTs tried to revive. I'm putting this together from what people told me. I have no direct memory of this. And after 20 minutes, they said I jumped on my feet, starting to dust my clothes. Asked me a few questions, and I answered it correctly until they asked me my age, and I said I was 35, and I then collapsed. And then from there, they literally went, picked up my mom, told her, and they together took me to one of the local hospitals that evening.
And how long were you in that condition? Like, how long did you have to stay in the hospital?
Well, 3 hospitals over a month through the balance of that summer. Missed my first semester of college in recovery, but recovery at home. They released me the end of August. Through some boneheadedness of mine, I ended up being limited to bed at home through the new year. And then I went off to college that January.
Now, you mentioned it was right after choir practice. Were you always involved in your parish as a kid?
Yes, serving when I was a grade school kid at St. Augustine. The school masses, certainly at Mass.
That's a big
every
famous
Sunday.
parish there, St. Augustine's, right?
Yes, it has quite a history on many levels there in the Bronx. Certainly at Mass every Sunday with Mom. We weren't going to miss that. And I don't think I missed one even if I had the flu. I was there. Through high school, really began serving the parish, and the priests became our home, along with the friars. That's where we hung out. If there wasn't playing stickball in the neighborhood, we were up there playing stickball or working, painting, whatever, going to movies, softball games, the whole 9 yards at the parish.
Did you think about becoming a priest at that time? You were close to the parish, you knew these guys?
When I was 12 or 13 after confirmation, maybe 6 weeks, 2 months, I felt this burning passion in my heart. And I knew it wasn't anything I ate, it wasn't anything I drank. I can tell you honestly that in that moment, I knew God was calling me to the priesthood. That was before the car accident. That occurs recovery time. Notre Dame is there. And, you know, if God wants me to be a priest, he'd call me in the same fashion. You know, he'll start burning my heart again like St. Augustine. Huh? And then I'll answer. But let's see how this goes. I want to go to Notre Dame. It was a dream for me to do that. And that's the way we went. The vocation returned when I was working in South Bend. And speaking with so many people who were close friends, different faiths, did not know each other as far as I know, because from education to my newspaper work. And eventually, every one of them would ask me, have you ever thought of becoming a priest?
Yeah. Well, they say that's one of the biggest things that young people say, that sometimes they've never been invited by somebody, right? And they're waiting to be asked, would you like to be a priest?
That's right. And I never received it from a clergyman or a brother. I think some of them just felt it would happen, so never voiced it. Some of them would almost empower you. Be a server. Why don't you do this, this, and that?
Yeah.
And I'll ask a question. Okay, go ahead and do it. So they fostered it without speaking directly to it. It was all of these lay persons, men, women, from the Jewish faith, Episcopalian, Baptist, teachers, people who I didn't know, I might have met once, are asking me this question.
Well, when you were out at Notre Dame, did you remain close to the church? Were you regularly practicing Catholic and everything? I mean, even though it's a Catholic university,
That's right,
it doesn't
yeah.
mean...
The college years are challenging in themselves, but yes, I did. Every dorm on campus has a chapel. Every chapel on a Sunday has a mass. Our chapel and our rector was terrific, Father Pat Sullivan. So became a minister and a lector in the dorm on the campus. Holy Week, if I'm there, we'd go to the Basilica on campus for masses, and I became involved in the community through community service. So some of the local parishes, ironically, St. Augustine was the one to which I became attached.
But you stayed, you headed off in another direction though. You wanted to stay you got a job in journalism. You didn't get into the seminary right away. So, I mean, the idea may have been in the back of your head, but you didn't go into the seminary system right away, right?
No, ironically, I called Fort Wayne Diocese, Fort Wayne South Bend, when I was in education. Never make a connection. Never made a connection with anyone.
Really?
Left messages, they'd call, I wasn't there, returned, never made a connection. So I just stopped. Holy Cross was the congregation of the Holy Cross, Notre Dame's founding congregation. Interested me, but it didn't grab me. You know, and I think a lot of that had to do with the Notre Dame experience, some of the challenges I faced. And looking back on it, this was just God's plan. right? This was a path that I would not trade in to be where I am now.
Right.
You know, and I go back and I think about every person, they come to mind even if I'm not. 15-minute encounter, people I know for life, and how each person has contributed to this path.
So at what point did you really stop and sit up and say, hey, maybe it's time, maybe I really want to become a priest? And how did you came back to the Archdiocese of New York?
When I returned to New York, I moved in with my sister in Park Slope and her family. And I decided on that one Saturday I need to return to St. Augustine's, see everybody for Sunday Mass, and I attended. I served the Mass, and it was during Mass when I decided now's the time.
Wow. And how old were you at that point?
I was, 34.
Wow. Yeah. What was your sister's reaction, or your family's reaction in general?
I went to tell my mom after my first visit with the vocations director, Father McEwen. I'm the youngest of 6. She lived alone at the time, and Mom, I have something to tell you. She says, no, come, sit down. I have something to tell you, but Mom, just sit down. So I sat down. You know, all of these years I've been praying for you, to Mother Cabrini and the Blessed Mother, that when you return, you'll be wearing a Roman collar. As usual, my mom beat me to it.
Wow.
She had the surprise of a lifetime for me. I said, well, what am I going to say now? I said, well, they've answered your prayers. I'm applying to the seminary. And she just started to cry.
Jeez. Now, you're of Puerto Rican descent, right?
I am.
So, this is a big deal. I mean, there were not a lot of Puerto Rican priests in the diocese, more so now than. So it must have been a big deal for the family to have a priest in the family, right?
Yes, for almost everybody, I think. There's one sibling was not condemning it, not outwardly against it, but you know, I was thinking of you having kids and nephews and nieces. I said, well, you know, there's always adoptions. There's always adoption. I'm sorry, but this is the way we're going to go right now. This is where God wants me to go.
We're going to take another quick break, and then we'll talk about ordination and your ministry now. Talk with Father Eric Cruz. This is On the Block. I'm Ed Wilkinson. Stay with us. Welcome back to On the Block. I'm Ed. This is Father Cruz, and we're talking about your decision to become a priest now. And after all these years of working and various experiences, and now you got to go into the seminary. Was that a hard transition to go back into an academic setting like that?
Oh, yes. It was very hard. And I think the hardest part was, one, being out of school for so long.
Yeah.
I never dreamed of returning on a lay level just to earn a master's.
Right.
And then it's the year separation, the age between myself and my classmates.
Right. So how difficult is that? I mean, what adjustments did you have to make? Did you enjoy it? Did you not enjoy it?
I enjoyed it immensely. I really did. Being older compared to it was an advantage. I had not always been a most patient person in my own life prior, but I had grown into one. When you're in a collegial setting, because a pre-theology program is very much like a college program. It was a mixture of the older gentlemen in pre-theology, collegiate students, their enthusiasm, their focus, and everything else that comes with it. So it was a very dorm dynamic.
But you're looking at 4 or 5 years, you know,
Yeah,
at that point in your life.
I could live with 2, so we got okay. When we entered Dunwoody, now it's a matter of community. It's a matter of community. It's a matter of now, in many ways, I started to see my role as not just a classmate, but getting to know my younger classmates' parents, and I think of 2 in particular, who we became very close, and their dads would always tell me, hey, you know, he sees you as a big brother, and I need you to be his father when I'm not around.
Wow.
So that really gave me a greater appreciation of the dynamic of the community life than as the life of the class. That we're really brothers here. And that was very helpful to me in helping me focus and, I don't want to say nurture them, but be there for them when it's exam time, midterm time, because I certainly was going to need their help.
Yeah.
And so we could work together and socialize and have fun outside of the seminary. Go to a ball game, go to the diner Sunday after masses, and really have quality, good time together.
Are those contacts that you maintain to this day?
Very much so. Our class is very close, always contacting each other. Even our classmates from Philadelphia, we spent 1 year of spirituality together in Pennsylvania. They were ordained the same day we were, May 17th. And we still keep it as close contact as possible. Absolutely.
What was ordination day like for you?
Nerve-wracking, although I didn't want to let my classmates know because 2 of them were crying before we left the seminary. But it was nerve-wracking. It was just, wow, all of these years, we're finally here. It was like undergraduate graduation, shaking as we were processing up, at least I was. When they called us by name, the call by name, I was first alphabetically, and then Father Espaillat was second. And I remember he whispered into my ear, "Oh, I'm gonna start crying, I'm gonna start crying." I said, "Go ahead. If you don't cry now, when are you gonna cry?" You know, it's a joyful occasion. It was just nervous, anticipating the excitement of having Father R.C. vest me from deacon to priest. He was my childhood pastor in St. Augustine, married my oldest sister, presided over her wedding, and he's a natural crier. So he was red-faced and just drowning in tears, but before he came to me with the chasuble. So, and everyone knew it, we had fun with it, it was just an incredible celebration.
The ordaining prelate was who?
Bishop Egan, Cardinal Egan.
Cardinal Egan.
Yes.
And your family, were they all there at the church?
Well, my nephew, my sister's son, was being married at the same day in Hawaii. So we had a split ceremonies. I won custody of mom, so she stayed with us. And 2 of my siblings was with me, and some of my college roommates and classmates were there.
Now, who was more emotional, you or your mom?
I'd have to say me. She has a stronger General Patton look about her that day. Very boom. I was a little more. Now, the first Mass, no, you know what? I was more emotional too, the first Mass, I must confess, yes.
Now, what has ministry been like for you? Because you bring with a lot of life experiences to your role now. How has what went before all of this helped you be a priest?
I think one of the great qualities a priest, please God, can have and will learn about and grow with is the virtue of empathy. Knowing and experiencing what that other person opposite you has experienced and is experiencing. And I'm not saying sympathize with it. I'm speaking about knowing it, having lived it, and living it and feeling it with them. I think that's the one thing I've really grown and learned about more, and more so with Catholic Charities. It's been an incredible blessing because of that more direct crisis contact with people.
Can you understand their situation more because of some of the trials that you went through?
Absolutely. I think of college students who come to pantries looking for food. They can't make ends meet. They're not homeless, thank God.
And you remember.
But they're struggling. So just to sit down and talk to them about it gives them an avenue to vent and to just share and talk. Because someone's been there with them 15, 20 years, 25 years, they're elder. Single kids, right? Homeless kids, homeless families, that we've seen an increase in that. 12,000 homeless in the city of New York.
Wow.
Children, hungry with that. That brings about, that's why it makes it so emotional when you're working with them. And you try to keep that balance, that empathy, that compassion, that love, and helping them understand, giving them the hope that this is not the end, that there is something greater that will come, but we will accompany you with that. You're not alone. Don't be embarrassed by it like I was. Don't let that choke you back. Men, don't be so macho that you can't ask for help.
That's the theme of Pope Francis, the accompaniment, right?
That's correct.
Encountering the risen Lord through this.
That's exactly right. The Lord sent the apostles out 2 by 2 for a reason.
Yeah. Last question. If somebody would come to you today in the parish or say, Father, I'm thinking about becoming a priest, what would be your advice to them?
How old is the person? I'm going to cop out here.
All right, somebody in college.
How are you praying? What are you doing in your life? Have you spoken with anyone else about this? I may be the first one. So I might offer myself to continue speaking with that young man over the next few months, helping them come in contact with our vocations director, but really helping them educate, empower them in the gift of prayer, the gift of the rosary, the relationship with the Blessed Mother, the Mass itself. Not to exclude, of course, what do you do in your spare time? What do you enjoy doing? What are you reading? Are you reading sacred scripture?
Yeah.
Do you have a spiritual author? What do you enjoy doing? What do you, if you're not going to a ball game and you don't want to just sit around, what would you like to be doing?
Yeah.
Then we start talking about that balance between the active and the prayerful life. Ora et labora, right? Saint Benedict.
Right.
Prayer and labor, and foster that.
Well, there's so much more we could talk about, Father. I've enjoyed it immensely. Thanks for being with us here today. We've been talking with Father Eric Cruz. I'm Ed Wilkinson. You've been watching On the Block. Thanks for being with us today.